Great. Welcome, everybody. Thanks, Colette, and thanks everyone for joining us for our December website chat. It's great to see you at our last chat of 2022. My gosh, where did the year go? And our first chat before the start of the 2023 legislative session. So hopefully we'll be able to continue these in our normal schedule, and I will beg your flexibility if things come up last minute over the next several months, but glad to have an opportunity to connect with you all here today. Let's see, so some tips and tricks about Zooming like a pro. I know we're all getting very, very familiar with these tools, but if anybody needs a refresher, Colette always provides these really helpful reminders on how to maximize our use of these kinds of tools. So some things we want to talk about today. This may be a little bit shorter website chat, but we did want to share some timely updates with you about our commission and recent commission meeting, as well as talk to you a little bit about some of the legislative priorities of the state library that we'll be talking a whole lot more about in the coming months. And then, as always, we'll share with you ways that you can continue to connect and find new information and news from the state library. I wanted to start by welcoming two of our new state library commissioners. We've had a bit of turnover in the state library commission this year. Tom Burnett from Bozeman was recently appointed by the governor's office. He fills the seat vacated by Kristen Kerr in October. Tom is a former legislator. He served, I think he said, about 4 terms in the Montana House. He previously served on the education budget subcommittee in the House. So he sat on the budget subcommittee that hears the state library budget. And so he's familiar with the work of the state library, familiar with our budget, and he's proving to be just a great addition to the State Library Commission. And then you all know that Henning Arlich left the state when he took a position in Europe. And so he vacated the seat that was held by the OCHE, the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Education appointment. And so Patricia Dubosky, who is the library director at MSU Northern, was appointed by the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Ed to fill that seat on the State Library Commission. And if you're not aware, that is the one seat on the commission that has to be filled by a librarian. It has to be filled by a librarian within the Montana University system. And so we're really happy to have Patricia. Patricia is new to Montana too. So I hope you'll take an opportunity to reach out to her and welcome her to the Montana library community. I wanted to share a few updates with you from our commission meeting that we had this past Wednesday and remind you that our meetings are always, first, they're available on Zoom if you want to listen in and share comments. And then the meetings are always recorded and available for you to listen to after the fact. This is my sister's cat, Numa, who is living with my father right now. So welcome, Numa. One of the things I wanted to share with you is information about our hotspot program. Superintendent Arnson had specifically asked for information about the hotspot program itself and the impact that it's having on Montana. And so Kara shared just a really nice informative update about the hotspot program, its history, its use, and the impact it's having as citizens are checking out those hotspots. Kara couldn't be with us today. Otherwise, I would have asked her to share that information with you here. So we'll ask her to participate in a future website chat. And in the meantime, you can always listen into the State Library Commission meeting to hear that presentation. But you know, that program, it's been a little bit challenging, I know, for some libraries to administer, but the overall use, the use of the data, the use of the hotspots continues to increase. We know about 48% of Montanans who are checking out those hotspots are using them either for work-related needs or school-related needs. And that's really compelling for us as we think about how we can continue to support and sustain that really important program as Montana works to try to bridge that digital divide. The Commission also took action to approve an e-resources collection development policy. This collection development policy governs the state library's procurement of e-resources that are purchased in collaboration and support of all libraries around the state. We have previously had a Montana Library to Go collection development policy, but we did not have a broader collection development policy to govern other types of e-resources that we've been procuring with our ARPA funds and hope to be able to continue to procure in the future. And so good library best practices, we needed to adopt that kind of collection development policy. So this policy says that the state library collects materials in support of our mission and our Fair Library Access Resolution, and that titles are selected in conjunction with the e-resources core services committee under the guidance of the Network Advisory Council. It also has a challenge process within the collection development policy. That challenge process first directs people to contact their local libraries to make sure that those concerns are being heard and addressed at the local level. And if at the local level, a local library is not able to resolve a patron's concerns, ultimately that concern could be shared with the State Library Commission for their consideration. That's the process that's been in place for many years with the Montana Library to Go collection development policy. And so that's consistent with this new collection development policy. The collection development policy was drafted in coordination with the Network Advisory Council, so we appreciate their input in helping to develop the policy. One of the points that was discussed in creation of the policy was the role of parents and the rights of minors. And so the policy has a statement on intellectual freedom that acknowledges that we support intellectual freedom and the right for individuals to determine what is appropriate for their own individual information needs. It acknowledges that minors also have that right in the state of Montana, and that librarians cannot deny access to materials to minors. And the policy states that we encourage the involvement of parents and caregivers in understanding what their children are reading and accessing through the library. So that policy is now available through the State Library website. We're happy to share that out for all of you. Now, with the adoption of our new logo as part of our public awareness campaign, the State Library intends to begin working in earnest with Hoffman York to actually create materials that will educate Montanans both about the work of the State Library and the information resources we have. And we hope that this will be an opportunity for us to work in collaboration with all of you to help promote the services from the State Library that you all rely on to help support your patrons. So with the ongoing discussions about the logo sort of delaying our efforts to roll out the awareness campaign, we're very, very pleased in a position that we can now begin to do that educational work in earnest. And then finally, as we do at our December meetings, the State Library Commission adopted the next fiscal year's land information plan. And you've heard me describe this plan in the past. This plan is a guide that sets forward the priorities for our work with geospatial information and geographic information systems. We always put forward a plan for adoption in December, because that plan spells out the priorities for the GIS grants that we award to local governments. So The notice for that grant period will open up in the middle of January, and we'll be accepting applications for those grant awards through the end of February. And then in the spring, our Land Information Advisory Council and the Commission will go through the process of awarding those grants. And so the Land Information Plan spells out the priorities for the grants that we hope to award in the spring. And again, that information is also available on the website. So it was a long and very productive, and I hope worthwhile commission meeting. Again, it's great to have a full commission and some new commissioners that seem very interested and engaged in the work of the state library and the work of libraries around the state. Always encourage you to tune in and to stay aware of the work of the State Library Commission. I'm gonna pause there in case there's any questions or comments. Okay. So a little bit about our 2023 legislative priorities, and some of this is not new information for you. We've been talking for many months now about the reauthorization of the per capita per square mile state aid. You know that we are working to reauthorize that legislation with an increase in the amount that's appropriated from 40 cents to 50 cents per capita, and with the addition of tribal college libraries that might be eligible to receive those funds. So that legislation is moving through the pre-introduction process at this point. If you're looking for a reference number for that bill, it's LC 344. Representative Courtney Sprunger from the Flathead Valley is going to be the sponsor for that piece of legislation, and I really look forward to working with her. She's a new legislator. She's a Republican. She is working closely with former legislator Frank Garner, who sponsored this legislation back in 2017, the last time it was reauthorized. So she's got some great mentors to help her with that process. And coming from the Flathead Valley, where we anticipate having some potential questions raised about this legislation, I know that her ability to work with legislators from the Flathead Valley will be important to the success as we work to adopt that legislation. You are going to be hearing and are probably already seeing requests from the Library Association to communicate with your legislators, have your boards communicate with legislators about the importance of this legislation. It's important for us to talk about how you use the state aid funds, how they benefit your libraries and your patrons. And so when you see requests for information to support this legislation, please respond. If you have any questions, do let us know. It'll be really important for all libraries around the state to be engaged to make sure that we reauthorize this important piece of funding for all Montanans. And then just some additional legislation that the State Library will be working on. We have been supporting at the State Library what's called the Montana State Reference Network, or you've probably heard us talk about it as the Montana Real-Time Network. This is a network of GPS repeater stations that provide constant communication around the state to provide very, very precise location information that's used by surveyors, the agricultural community, and so forth. We are asking for authorization to continue to operate that network and to create an enterprise fund to help make that reference network self-sustaining. And then we've been working with the Lieutenant Governor to propose just some updates to some of our existing statutory authority that involves the Montana Land Information Act and the Natural Resource Information System Advisory Council. You may have read about the governor's red tape relief initiative, where they're working to streamline the effectiveness of Montana code and make the work of state government more efficient and more effective. And so we're looking at some modernizations and improvements and efficiencies that we can gain through some changes in these pieces of legislation. We don't have pre-introduction numbers for those bills yet. And then, of course, we'll be looking at House Bill 2, the state budget bill, which contains the state library's operating budget. And one of the key changes that we have asked for in this legislative session is just a reauthorization and reappropriation of some of our federal monies. The appropriation we have in the state budget doesn't necessarily keep pace with our federal Library Services and Technology Act funds. And so it's really sort of a housekeeping cleanup in the state budget bill that we're asking for to make sure that the appropriation better aligns with our federal award. And any other changes that may carry forward in the state budget pertaining to the state library would be contained in House Bill 2. What is not in House Bill 2 right now is the larger ask that we've been talking about for many months, the additional $4.8 million for a variety of different kinds of statewide programs and services. So that is currently not in House Bill 2. It's not contained in the state library's budget. We continue to work with the Montana Library Association, and they will be working with our legislative budget committee in an effort to get the budget committee to support that ask and have it added to House Bill 2. Again, I'll pause and ask if there are any questions.
Jenny, one question is, when should library directors and their trustees be looking for opportunities to potentially testify on behalf of the state library? And you mentioned when those calls go out to please respond, but is there any timeline that you can share?
Good question, Colette. With regard to the state library's budget, we don't have a hearing date yet. It will probably be sometime mid to late January, possibly even early into February. And I'll share that information. With regard to the state aid legislation, the legislative session starts on January 2nd, and it is quite possible that that bill itself could have a hearing in the early weeks of the legislative session. I expect that that bill will be heard in the full House Appropriations Committee. And so it could be within the first 2 to 3 weeks of the session where libraries might anticipate being asked to testify. And then shortly after that, there would be sort of an all hands push by librarians to reach out, especially to those legislative members on House Appropriations, to support a positive vote on that legislation. So really start paying attention in the early weeks of January. And then the bill would progress from there. I have heard, this is not official, but I have heard that we have received authorization to hold an event in the Capitol Rotunda the evening of February 7th. That's the night before the February State Library Commission meeting. And that is in lieu of Library Legislative Day that we've often held at the Montana State Library, because our space has changed. We asked for leave to host that event in the rotunda of the Capitol, and I received an unofficial text saying that date was confirmed. So as soon as I know that it is confirmed, we'll be sure and let you know. And that would be a fantastic date for as many of you as possible to plan to come to Helena. And sometimes the legislative staffers have been great in trying to schedule some of these hearings around that date. So perhaps our budget hearing could be earlier that day, or a hearing on the state aid legislation, so that you have a chance to come and be a part of that process and testify or provide public comment if you wish. So hopefully we'll have a more solidified set of dates for you, probably the first week of January or so. Any other questions? Okay. All don't know if we need a break or not, but feel free to stretch. We don't have too much more information. Again, a great way for you to connect with the State Library through our website, newsletters, help desk. We continue to provide information to Wired as well as our different Gov delivery channels. And of course, our staff are always here to support you. I did want to give Suzanne just a minute to talk about, excuse me, Numa, the ACP program grant request. So Suzanne, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. And it's always nice to have cat participation in these.
Yeah, Numa. Numa Ridge and Glacier Park, if anybody's familiar with Numa Ridge.
Anyway, I asked Jenny for a few minutes because one of the things we're looking at is applying for a grant on behalf of outreach in connection with the Affordable Connectivity Program. And I don't know, hopefully you are at least familiar with the program that's out there. It's a federal program that is providing discounts on internet service for households that meet certain guidelines as far as need goes. And of course, it's a federal program. There's all kinds of things on there as far as, how they calculate. You have to be 200% of the poverty rate on that. But Montana has low participation. And I think, we talked a little bit about the hotspot program before and how important that's been for meeting people's internet needs. I think, for a lot of people, it's also nice if they could have ongoing broadband access at home. And this is one of the things that could possibly help with that. So when we're looking for applying for a grant, one of the things we were thinking about was to hire some traveling digital navigators who would go around and hold events around the state, possibly at libraries or in other community centers, and let people know about the program and actually help them sign up, help them through the application process. And so I thought this would be an opportunity to start sounding people out as far as who might be interested in hosting such an event and participating in that. So, and it's not a commitment at this point, just kind of trying to get an idea as to scope, if everybody in the whole state is really interested, we need a whole lot more people than if, there's just scatterings, and I kind of looking around, it looks like we've got mostly people from kind of central and eastern Montana here, but hopefully people who are listening to the recording could also contact me if they're interested. So anyway, show of hands anyway on the chat if you think you might be interested in that, or you can do a vocal thing if you want. So like I said, so we can just kind of get an idea as to who we think might be interested. Or if you have questions, you can ask that too.
Thanks, Suzanne. Appreciate you being here. I'm trying to figure out how to raise my hand. I can't remember anymore.
Oh, you can hit, if you go to reactions.
That's what I thought. It was under
down below. And there's a raise hand one, or you can do a thumbs up or applause or anything you like.
Pause. For some reason, I'm not getting my Zoom to work very well, but okay. Anyway, applause.
And I'm not seeing any, so we're not getting a whole lot of resounding support. But like I say, yeah,
I'm in the chat there. A couple of people.
Yeah, Nancy says she's interested, and Mary, yeah, by all means, go ahead and email me or call me, and I'll be happy to to give you more information.
Great.
So thanks, and thanks for giving me a few minutes with that, Jenny.
You bet. Thanks for joining us, Suzanne. All right, I think that covers what we wanted to cover today. Is there anything else anybody has any questions about? Anything I didn't cover that you wanted me to try to address? I do not know what is going on with my Zoom today, but I am I am being challenged.
You can enter your questions in chat or feel free to unmute and ask your question if there's something that you'd like us to address.
All right, friends. Well, I wish you a happy Friday and very happy holidays. Happy New Year, and we'll see you in 2023.
Thanks so much, everyone. We'll have our recording posted a little bit later this afternoon. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions. Thanks so much and have a lovely afternoon.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Coley.